Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us at the 9th Annual Startup Boston Weekend. Our mission with the conference is simple: to bring together the entire startup community across every industry department and funding stage. Startup Boston exists to connect, educate, and celebrate this ecosystem while serving as a trusted, unbiased guide to the best resources that can help you start and scale your startup or your team. My name is Scott. I will be your host for today. But before we kick off, I first want to give a huge thank you to Suffolk University, Sawyer Business School, currently in this building where we are residing, for hosting this. This is their third year hosting us, and we are very grateful for them for providing that space. If you're interested in exploring entrepreneurship, they offer a variety of programs and opportunities. So if you're interested in that, be sure to stop by their table at the vendor hall right up on the first floor. Otherwise, today we have a pretty good session for us. Excuse me. Got a lovely panelist right here. One thing I will ask though is you will definitely have questions throughout this whole session, so I'm sure you're all dying to ask them. We will have a Q&A at some point during this, in which case I will ask you to hold your questions till then, and then raise your hand. So that way we have a lovely mic runner in the back. We'll provide you with a microphone, and you can hold it for your face and have your little diva moment. Otherwise, thank you so much for attending Startup Boston Weekend, or week, and you.
Is this on? It is?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Diane. I'm really glad to be here. I'm going to be talking with you today about value frameworks. So a little bit about me. I've already talked to a couple of you, but I have been working in software for longer than I like to say, but about 35 years, and was fortunate enough to be at the very beginning of the SaaS curve. It didn't used to matter whether your customers got value from your software or not, because you had their money already. And, all you really had to do was get them to pay maintenance fees. But SaaS changed all that, and now it matters a lot. So I spent the last 30 or so years in building and leading post-sale teams, whether that was implementation, customer success, renewal, support, all the things. And about 3 years ago, I left my last corporate CCO job to start consulting. And I've been loving it, and I've had the great chance to meet a lot of other cool people, like my friend Rob Seppi up here. And so one of the things that I really focus my consulting work on is value frameworks and the importance of delivering value to your customers. So just asking a couple questions. For those of you that are here as, you work at SaaS companies, do your customers ever question the value of the solution? That ever comes up? Okay. And do they ever have a hard time saying what the value is that they're getting?
Can you hear okay?
Yeah. You say you're getting value to us? Yeah. So that's a problem. And the reason it's a problem is that customers, whether we're talking about software or any subscription customer, customers go back and buy again and buy more when two things are true. The first one is they're having a good experience. Think about this. You go out to eat dinner, restaurant, fantastic service. It's amazing. And then the bill is like $4,000 for you, right? That's not good. So it's really important that you get the value commensurate with your spend. So two things have to be true. You have to feel value and get value. And it's that ability to define the value that you're getting that is so critical. It's not enough to say, I think it was worth the money. So it's not good enough. You will lose customers all the time. So why is talking about value so hard? Well, first of all, it's really squishy, right? People, sales reps are like, oh, and you'll get all these great outcomes, and no one ever really talks about these like hard, measurable things. Second, you're only asking the customer the question when you need one more, right? They're kind of like on the spot, and if they say no, you lose them. If they say yes, you just shoot, and then you move on to the next year. And then you don't have any sort of way, framework, or tools to really support the conversation other than, we think it's worth it, you think it's worth it? So the components of a value framework, the tools and the framework that you need to have these discussions with your customer are this. First, articulate the reason or reasons the customer is buying. What are the reason or reasons they're buying? That's part one, we'll come back to that. Part two is, how will they tell? How will they measure? A year in, 6 months in, I just spent, $50,000 on that. How can I tell if it was worth it? How will I measure that? And finally, what are the activities and workflows that they have to do with your software and in their business to achieve those outcomes? Here's a really common example that tends to resonate with people. It's a meal kit delivery service. My husband and I renovated our kitchen a couple years ago, so we had a lot of experience with these. But here's an example of, let's say your reason for wanting a meal delivery service. If you do this, if you do meal delivery, everyone has their own reasons for doing it, right? But let's say my reason is that I want to eat healthier and I don't have time to shop and prepare healthy meals. And I'm going to tell whether it was worth it if I lose weight and I save a lot of time. That's how I'm going to measure my outcomes. The vendor has to give me the right recipes, the right things to deliver on time. But there's things I have to do that the vendor has to they kind of have to help me do, because if I don't do them, I'm not going to renew my subscription and I'm going to blame the vendor. But I have to, for example, not eat all my meals on Monday. They deliver a week's worth. That would probably not help me achieve my outcomes. But it's something that as a vendor, you're responsible for making sure your customer does. It's not your product, but it's something you still have to help them do. So here's an example of a value framework that I just finished developing with a customer of mine. They sell fire safety software. So they used to say to their customers, buy us so that your insurance rates will go down, right? And the problem with that is there's such a big gap between buying the software and that happening. And by the way, there's lots of things that affect insurance rates that have nothing to do with them, right? It could be the politics, it could be the regulations, it could be almost anything. So what they changed that to is, if you want to grow your business revenue, we can help you with that by using, this does not have a link, so I don't think, it does. No? Okay. These are the ways we can measure that. Now you might say, oh, well, grow my revenue, but what if I just hire some really amazing salespeople? That's true, that can help you grow your revenue too, but the outcomes we can impact are, we're going to reduce the time for you to do an inspection to getting a proposal out the door. And we know when people get proposals faster, they're likelier to buy. We came up with these 3 reasons for customers buying, and these are the outcomes that we defined as critical to customers. Here's another example. This is a trucker safety, trucker safety software. Same thing, they used to sell to get insurance rates down, but they couldn't prove it because there was no direct connection. So they came up with these very specific reasons for buying and outcomes that you could measure because of their software. So what happens when you've done this, right? You say, okay, we know what customers are buying. We understand the outcomes they're looking for. And so let's take the meal kit delivery service as an example. How does this actually look in the life cycle? Well, at kickoff, it's not a SaaS product, but still, at kickoff, your onboarding person says to the customer, so I understand that the reason for buying is you need to lose weight, no offense, and you want to save time. Do I have that right? That's your reason for buying. Yeah, actually, that's right. Thank you so much for knowing that. And then onboarding, what we do as part of onboarding is make sure I'm just getting to those outcomes. They're not teaching me about all the menus they have, all the Italian, all the everything, all the different cuisines. They're just focused on getting me to my outcomes. So let's say, if we go back to let's think of another software example. Let's say I went and bought Salesforce.com, right? So you do a ton of things with that. But let's say my reason for wanting to buy Salesforce.com is because I wanted visibility into my pipeline, right? So what the onboarding person would do is they wouldn't start by showing me all the cool different reporting I can do and all the service modules and support modules. That would be silly. What they would show me is the things I need to do to get my pipeline in there and how to report on it. When I got to the end of onboarding, they'd make sure that I was either had already achieved the outcome I cared about, or was I well on my way. to achieving. The CSM would step in and continue helping me on the path to those outcomes. And when I got close to achieving those, he or she would pull up the value framework and say, now what else would you like to accomplish with our product? The idea is that at every stage in the journey, you're using this framework as the anchor of all of your conversations with the customer. You're checking back in with them. You said you wanted to accomplish X. Are you? No. Let's go back and make sure you are. It's so funny because just today I had a conversation with a customer prospect, and she was talking about the onboarding routine and what they do is very classic in onboarding. I refer to it as they read the manual to their customers. We've all had this experience, right? Where and here's my analogy for this, and Robin's heard this before. So when we redid our kitchen, my husband does all the cooking in our house, good for everyone, and trust me on this. And so he had free license for all the appliances, right? He bought this stove. If I had to boil water, I'm sure I could, but I don't understand. It's European, it's very fancy. And it came with this like really thick manual. And my husband is the guy that reads it, right? Tells you all the knobs and all the buttons. And what it doesn't do is tell you how to make a stew. That's not the instruction manual's job, to make a stew, right? What you need for that is a cookbook. But a lot of software vendors, when they start with onboarding, they go, what is it that you want to do? They sort of go, let me show you all the cool stuff about this stove, right? And they read you the instruction manual. So, same thing, when you get handed off post onboarding, your CSM's like, hey, did you hear about this cool feature? It's like, well, no, and I don't care because I want to make a stew, right? It's really important to keep the customer's outcomes in mind. So here's the thing, let's say you go to all that effort, you think about, what are the reasons customers buy my software? How will they measure the outcomes that they're going to get? And importantly, you come up with the outcomes and offer them up to the customer. You don't leave it wide open. Say, these are the 5 outcomes we can help you achieve. Which one do you want? Or which 2 do you want? So here's what you do. You build those components. Then you, what I call value-ize the artifacts. Set up tracking, use it with customers and so on. But the key thing here is like a lot of people, when they start doing this, they think, oh my God, I'm going to have to get sales and marketing and strategy involved to figure out these value drivers and outcomes. And like, that's just not true. You can do that. One of the important things about doing this is that you can go light or heavy, and even a very light approach to doing this is huge. Even if you can just get to, do you need me to do something different? Can I sit down? Would that be better for you?
Sorry, folks, people online are having trouble hearing.
Sorry. Is this better? Yeah, no, I can't see your name. So my point is, I thought about that earlier.
If you want these ones here, you can.
No, it's okay. Yeah. So start with whatever you've got, right? Is the point. So let's say you figured out the reason. Oh, I can see that there. The reason or reasons the customer is buying. Great. How do you do that? Right. Again, there's 2 ways to go about this. Lightweight way is you get together with people on your post-sale, in your post organization, CSM, support, onboarding. Why do people buy our software? Let's look at our messaging that we see online, and let's go from what are they trying to do? And make it be something that is really doable with only your software. Or you can do this very strategic exercise. Both are good. And the reason I say this is because lots of people I talk to say, well, geez, this is a big company-wide effort. It's going to be so hard to do. And the truth is you can build a simple value framework in a week just by mining the knowledge of the people who work with customers every day and get a pretty good start. Importantly, I can't really read that far, unfortunately. So pick things that you can credibly own, right? Or at least choose outcomes that you can credibly own. So if you say things like, people buy us because they want to reduce their insurance rates, they're going to go, yeah, but lots of things can impact insurance rates. Even if you guys are awesome, you can't prove that you were the reason. So pick reasons and outcomes. You go, yeah, we can impact the weather, of course, but we can impact this one outcome, which you will agree is tied to reducing your insurance rate. So make sure that you don't, you can use a pretty broad value driver as long as the outcomes can be directly attributed to your software. So and so let's talk about outcomes. How do you do those? So there's the outcomes are, so first, do not start with a blank sheet of paper with your customer. Don't ever say to your customer, so what are you trying to accomplish? Which outcomes do you care about? They're gonna go, well, I'd really like it if half my employees did this and the other half did that. And you're like, actually, we can't make that happen. You need to give them the outcomes from which to choose. So curate a list. Ask yourself, when people use our software, what kinds of outcomes can they expect to change because of us? So if you're dealing with I talked to a customer the other day who's doing employee experience software. Well, what can you do? Well, one of the things you can do is you can say, we want our turnover rate to go down. We believe that our software impacts that, right? If you need ideas for outcomes, there's a bunch of places you can go. There's tons of content that you already have on your website. Find out what sales reps are saying. Look at your case studies and testimonials. Again, make sure the outcome is something that you can say to the customer and they will know their current value of it. Oh, great, what's your current retention rate? Something they will know. Now, these are likely to be things that only the customer knows. The outcomes are not things that you track, they're things the customer tracks. So they might say to you today, well, today our retention rate is, 80%. Great, that's our current value. Or we don't know what it is. They might say, we want this one thing to be easier. All right, well, how hard is it today on a scale of 1 to 10? Make up a metric, make up a way for the customer to give you a value. Is it red, yellow, or green today? If they don't know an absolute number value of it. So find a way to have a baseline. And then finally, the activities and workflows. The way to think about this is, you've got your value drivers, my reason for buying. I've got the outcomes I want to accomplish. The activities are the tasks you do for the customer. This is like configuration, training, things like that. And then it's the tasks the customer must do with your product and in their business. Process adherence, adoption, all those things where you sell it, you implement it, and you're not using it. It's not because you did anything wrong, because they didn't do the work of getting their team to adopt it. It turns out you need to help them do that. You don't have to, but when they churn, it's kind of still your fault, right? So what do I mean by this? What I mean is, imagine that same journey, and now the AE, the sales rep, is somewhere, either in a handoff doc, which I'm sure they complete all the time. I'm sorry, this is making a lot of noise. Somewhere they're tracking the reasons the customer bought and their outcomes that they're tracking. They communicate that to the post-sale team, right? And they have that in some sort of an artifact. Better? Yeah, don't bother so much. So there's an artifact where you're talking about the value there. At kickoff, your kickoff deck has it in there, right? Customer starts to get the picture. Oh, we're going to be talking about this all the time. I'm going to be talking about value all the time throughout the life cycle. And then when I'm onboarding, they're teaching me how to get to the outcomes I care about. They're not teaching me all the knobs and buttons. They're teaching me how to make the stew that I really want to make. When I'm engaging with the customer further, great. Well, now I know how to make the stock for the stew, but you're going to teach me the rest of making the stew. And finally, at renewal time, you have some sort of brief that said they cared about this reason for buying. They cared about these outcomes. Here's where they are. That's what you need to know to close the renewal. Now, critical here are the playbooks. And what I mean by playbooks are, the playbooks are, customer says, I'm buying because I I want to improve my employee retention, and I'm gonna measure that by looking at, right now, I think we're at 80%, I wanna get to 90%. Okay, well, when your post-sale team takes that on, they use their Improve Employee Retention Playbook, which lists all the activities that you must do for the customer, all the activities they must do in the product, and all the activities they must do in the business. Everything. It's the cookbook for the stew. Does that make sense? So you end up typically with a playbook per value driver with slight variations based on outcome that you're targeting. So if a value just people buy for one reason and there's 5 possible outcomes they're measuring, the playbook covers the instructions, but if they care more about one outcome than another, it might have sections where it's like, if they care about this versus that, go to section B. But it's one playbook per value driver. So then what about capturing all this data? When the customer says, I care about value driver 1 and outcome B, what do you do? Now, ideally, this is, again, you can go whole hog or you can just start fresh. If you're small, you go, thank you so much. I'm going to note that in your customer record, in the notes, and the onboarding person will see that, and then the CSM will see that, and the renewal person will see that. And as that current value changes, we'll note that too. The fancy way to do it is to create fields in whatever systems you're using, so that in Salesforce, if you're using Salesforce or HubSpot or whatever you're using, you capture reasons for buying. So imagine a sales rep, drop down list, reasons for buying 1, 2, 3. They can choose all 3, but they have to be in priority order. And for each one, they capture the baseline value of the outcomes the customer cares about. That syncs over to your customer success platform if you have one. And then your CSM has that and can be updating the current value. So come renewal time or come QBR time, you go, well, you said you cared about this, your baseline value was this, and now it's so much better. So you need to find some way to track this data that you're asking about, because we all know books change hands, people come and go. You need to capture somewhere what the customer said they cared about, write it down, and say it back to them over and over. And every time you are saying it to them in any conversation, you're showing them the whole value framework and all the outcomes. This is so important because what you want them to do is go, yeah, I can see I'm making progress. But wait, you guys do all those other things too? Now I want to try that use case and these outcomes. So you always, always, always keep the whole menu in front of them. I'm old enough to remember this, but back in the day when you went shoe shopping, before you did everything online, the sales person would always bring back 5 or 6 pairs when you asked to see one. That's what this is, right? Really, simply put, it's that. Okay, so what would this look like? What does the whole life cycle look like now? The sales rep says, oh, we have a range of challenges that our product solves, but we've heard that you care about, this specific one. Do we have that right? And the customer says, yeah, that is the one I care about. And these are the outcomes I care about. Onboarding validates that with the customer, says it back to them, right? Great, now I'm going to show you how to get to those outcomes. Hopefully by the time you leave onboarding, you'll begin to see the needle change on some of those outcomes. Your customer success manager at handoff says to the customer, hey, onboarding said that you made some good headway achieving outcomes related to this reason for buying. Is that right? Customer says, yeah, great. Let's continue to make sure that you get fully there. And in subsequent meetings, let me show you some of the other things you can accomplish, right? So you constantly have this value conversation with the customer. And then ideally, of course, at renewal time, the renewal rep has this handy data available. So that's a lot. One of the things I always like to do when I give a presentation like this took like no time at all, I talked really fast, is first of all the slides, but I would encourage you to do it, not just because it's my website, like that's truly not the reason, but I've written a lot on this topic, and there's some really, solid blog posts on my website, customergrowthconsulting.com. These slides I've also put together for people that come to this a few resources that you can use out of the box. The first one is a value framework worksheet, which lists for you, the value drivers, the definition of those, the outcomes. It has all the things like fill in a value worksheet, and also has tabs for how to track the value of the outcomes, and a tab for tracking something else. A project plan template for doing this. If you decide you want to do this, there's a small project plan template you can use to do it yourself. And then the other thing I want to note here is there's a couple of products out there in the market now, and I'm like, great, now I'm at the end of my career. Now you have these, but there are a couple of great products out there. One of them is Foresight. Full disclosure, I'm an investor and an advisor in Foresight, but their software helps you build and report on value for customers, so you don't have to go do this yourself. They have an amazing free chatbot that they built to help you build about a starting value framework. All you do is you go to, and I'll send you the presentation and then you'll have a link to it. If you click on that link, their chat agent will say, what do you want to do? And you say, build me a value framework for company X. And it will give you a draft based on what it knows in the world about your company. It'll give you value drivers, outcomes, and activities. It won't be completely accurate, but it's a great place to start. You don't have to start from scratch. So, and I've been using it shamelessly for all my engagements. And like I said, the company name is Foresight. You should check them out if you have any interest in doing this. It's a saving grace that somebody has finally built technology to do this. So really the takeaways are, look, customers buy because they believe you're going to treat them well and they believe they're going to get value, right? And then there they are, right? They're 6 months in, they're using the software, they're meeting with you, and the buyer plunked down a bunch of money. No one's talking to that person anymore, probably. And the renewal comes due, and your users are like, yeah, we like it, but no one can really articulate why it's worth what you spent, because they never said what they were hoping to accomplish, and you didn't help them get there. And so this is just, I can't emphasize enough, you can love your customers to death, and if you don't do this, they will still leave you. Does that resonate for everyone? Okay. All right, and now I will open it for questions.
Thank you very much for a very insightful presentation. Actually, I'm building a startup that focuses on business outcomes and connecting them to business activities. So this is very, very insightful. So thank you for sharing that. One of the things that we find is our customers are getting a lot of value in the initial onboarding process and see how this connection works and how to prioritize intelligent data and stuff. But the roadblock we run into is the customers are telling us this is another new tool, another new platform to use, and I'm already using so many. So there's a little bit of friction. Now it's a chicken egg problem because unless they use this, they won't be able to run, get benefits out of it. But they are having trouble using it because it's adding friction to their workflow and the new tool. So how do we get around this problem to kind of incentivize them to use it, make it more sticky or something, so that they can actually start seeing the value? Because you don't see the value until you use the product, right? So how do you make this cycle?
I think that's the point where I really can't emphasize enough. Like, go narrow on your onboarding. Be really focused on what that customer needs. And because you're right, like most products, unless they're super simple, can be daunting. You think the doc is reasonable, but it's really not, or you think something's intuitive, but it's really not. And so to the extent that you can focus your onboarding on helping them accomplish the thing, the most important thing, they're going to have a list of things, right? Pick one thing and have them see how to accomplish that, and maybe even start to see a change in outcomes, right? Then they're sticky on that, right? And then they're willing to invest in, all right, well, what else can I do? Please do not read them the instruction manual. That's where stickiness dies. Because, your eyes glaze over, people are multitasking during all those Zoom calls. They remember a fraction of what they saw, and then they're asking their CSMs, like, wait, I can't remember how, or worse yet, they're not asking, right? Which happens all the time. So just please, and then the question people ask me after that is like, but then they only have been trained on like 1/10 of the product. Yeah, that's true, they have. Which means that your CSMs, upon helping them identify the next use case and the next set of outcomes, the CSMs will have to do that, or you gotta send them back for more training, either way. But it is never a good idea to train the customer on the whole thing up front. I mean, it seems like a good idea, but it is so often the reason why you won't get that adoption. It's too much.
Thank you. I've got a question about identifying objectives. So my entire career has been in B2B enterprise SaaS, so there's a little bit of context there, but a lot of it has been related to OpEx reduction as an outcome, things that are easily, maybe the software is transactional in nature, you can tie value derived quite easily, or simply at least. Working on a problem now where the value realization is through the acquisition of knowledge and better decision-making. You build the right thing instead of the wrong thing. It's a very different problem than the majority of my career. And so you don't need to solve my problem, but I'm curious about what is a company you've worked with in the past that had the softest value realization or objective, and I guess one that was successful and didn't have to pivot and find something. I'd be curious to hear about something that stands out in your mind.
So I hear you, and you're like, yeah, that's kind of a big outcome, and they won't realize it for 18 months or 24 months. What you need to do is identify outcomes that are leading indicators of that outcome. And I know I'm making that sound simple, and it's not. But probably the closest example is a company called Jellyfish, which is here in Boston, and they do engineering management software. And they've gotten way better at this, but when I first started consulting with them, this was their challenge. They said, you need to use engineering management software because it'll help you be more effective, help you do more, and sort of like, right? Yeah, like, well, we can do all this without you, so why would we do it? So they started doing is identifying leading indicators. They started identifying like bugs per release. If you can reduce the bugs per release, that's probably a good thing. If you can reduce your engineering person turnover, that's a good thing. These were things they could prove. And so you have to really think about what are the leading indicators for those big outcomes that customers will, yeah, I can see that that's connected. You have to be sure that you can connect it, right? But you're right, you can't just go with the ultimate outcome because it just takes too darn long and you'll be halfway through your renewal cycle and still not have gotten anywhere. So it's a great question. If you've got something like that, like we have marketing software that'll, improve your brand recognition. Okay, well, what are the leading indicators of that, right? Is it clicks? Is it, surveys? Is it, you've got to bring it down to something that you can measure sooner and faster.
Thank you. And so were their initial contract values smaller because the value derived were smaller bits and not tied to that larger outcome in the beginning?
Mm. I'm sorry.
Sorry, were the initial average contract values smaller as a result because they're tying that value to smaller increments?
So, your job then is to convince them, right? So what Jellyfish did, they said, okay, will you agree that it's true that a more efficient engineering team is one that releases fewer bugs and that has less turnover? Will you agree that those metrics are important to you? And if you agree that those metrics will help you solve that bigger problem, you can still close a big deal. But, you've got to, that's why coming up with those indicators is so important. And I can't suggest enough, like, pressure test this stuff. For all the work that I've done with customers, we never roll it out until I've had talked with customers and said, would you agree? And if they go, then it's not a good one. Like you can do this in a vacuum and end up with something that's not useful at all. It sounds really good, looks really good, feels all good, but it doesn't work. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. that one up here.
How do you view value frameworks in conjunction with the health score?
With
In conjunction with the health score?
the health score. So here's my philosophy on health scores. Health scores should be completely machine driven. Like, people at health score, my health score has like a bunch of usage data in it, has a CSM sentiment in it. It's got like how engaged the customer is, and no. The health score should be generated by a machine that has no soul and no emotion, and what it's looking at is the things it can measure, right? It can't measure outcomes because these are the customer's outcomes. Full stop, it can't measure it. What it can measure is things you think are important in terms of the usage of your software, right? Are they using key sticky features? Did they finish their onboarding? Like things you can measure. And then what you do is you hold that up against two other metrics. What the CSM's view is, human view. The health score is really great, but they are not happy with us. You have that, and then you have their value metric. Is it going up? Right? They said they want to get from X to Y. Are they moving that needle or not? You can look at it, yes or no. I recommend those three things: machine generated, CSM sentiment, or whoever knows the best sentiment, and whether or not that needle is moving on the metrics they care about.
Is it ever worth just focusing on this and leaving a health score out, or do you think they all need to be taken?
I mean, look, if you just look at the value, that would be fine, except that, it doesn't account for, it accounts for a lot, but it doesn't account for, the users would be telling you that, and you've lost the relationship with the executive buyer. So, I really recommend using at least two, one completely machine generated and one that is reflective of your CSM's view or the value framework, or both, ideally. Or you just ask, if you don't have a value framework, you just ask the question, are you getting value, yes or no, and have a field, yes or no, right? Like, something where you're asking the customer that question and not being surprised by their answer.
Thank you for the talk. The question was, when you're dealing with customers who may not yet appreciate the value based on where they are in their journey, what is the best way to approach describing value downstream when maybe they're not there yet?
Yeah, and again, to the extent that you can narrow your focus on the outcomes they care about, and they can see the path to getting to the outcome, as opposed to, trust us, this is going to improve your revenue in 24 months. I think that most customers can see the path sooner if you pick something that's fairly short term, right? If you're not able to show them that in 6 or 12 months, then probably the outcome you picked wasn't the right one, right? You should be able to move the needle on something, on a leading indicator of outcomes within the first 3 months, even if it's really complex enterprise software.
Hello, thanks so much for the talk. I had a question about ForSIAM. Like, what's their differentiation maybe compared to other large language models or others that you can kind of use to prompt? Is it the output they come with or visuals? Would love to learn more.
So I only know of one other product that is doing exactly what they're doing, and I'm spacing on the name. Does anybody here? I should know this as an investor. Sorry. I think there's a number of, customer experience products, things like that, but they're all good. I know of two that specifically are built for identifying the reasons customers buy and the outcomes they want, and then helping you track that over time and integrate it into that lifecycle. And so, I'm not sure. I will tell you, just in like full truth here, is like, I've only had one of my customers use them. You can do, like I said, the poor man's version of this is really effective. You do not need to buy software to get a lot of traction with this. I mean, the customers I'm doing this with now, one of them were in spreadsheets, right? And the CSM was looking at a spreadsheet to update the values. Another one was just beginning to track it. but we built the framework and the outcomes in meetings with one another without any software. So, don't let the software get in your way.
Got it. So would you say it's more of like a scalable motion for sales teams versus just like one-off selling?
It's a more scalable motion for a post-sale team, definitely. Because what it does, these tools, I know for Foresight, for example, it will serve up to the CSM. Here's the conversation you need to have next, right?
Yeah.
And here are the 3 things I heard from that last conversation that you need to highlight. Stuff you can do without Foresight with your own AI agents, but it does bring a tremendous amount of value, no pun intended. And I would use it with every customer if I could, but first of all, it costs money, and secondly, it's a bigger lift than just doing this lightweight version. And the idea is that these companies are going to be like, this would be easier to have a tool. Sort of like you can get along without a success platform for a while until you go, okay, I need to get out of Salesforce.
That's helpful. Thanks.
Thank you, Dan. I have a startup focused on supporting mothers during postpartum. And in this context, one customer, there's a defined duration that we support them. And renewal is not probably going to happen for a couple of years.
Please not me.
Yeah. So how do we think about this in that context?
So I think then you're talking about the value that you're talking about during the sales process, right? Because by the time they bought from you, and assuming you're doing a reasonable job there, you don't really have to have the constant value conversation with them. But I think being really clear about the value during the sales cycle is important. And then reminding them of it post-delivery, post-sale, is not a bad thing to do. Just remind them, as we said, you would be able to nap during the day, and sure enough, you're napping, whatever the things are that your service provides. But that's a case where like, this is a really helpful thing it's helpful for even a one-time offering, but it's really aimed at a renewable service or product.
I have a question for I'm very curious about B2C. I know this is not like the focus of the talk, but if you have any insights. You talked about the meal plan, right? It's an imaginary situation, but imagine for a customer, one of the goals is to save time and lose weight. I was working at another startup where we wanted to help people focus better. How do you do? It's very, very interesting what you said, that it is your responsibility to make sure the customer engages with the steps to achieve their goals. Do you have any insights about how would you do that on a B2C business?
Yeah, my favorite example for this is Peloton. Does anybody here have a Peloton? Okay, so I have a Peloton. I did not want this Peloton, but we have it, and I've really begun to love it. And the reason I love it is that they give you a lot of feedback, and they let you know, hey, if you really want to work on this, here's a thing you should try. If you don't, try this other thing. They sort of interview you at the outset for what your goals are, and then they're checking back in with you. They don't have to. I mean, we own it, right? But I'm paying the monthly subscription on it, and I say good things about them in the world. So they have decided to keep engaging with you as a buyer, even though they have your money already, right? And that's a choice that they've made. So that's why they have these massive communities, and it's become more of a movement than just a single product. So that's a great example of a B2C company that has really thought about, we don't have to keep these writers engaged after they buy, but if we do, then we can sell them other stuff, I haven't bought any other stuff yet, but.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Got another one.
Oh, God, I knew it. Oh,
I would love to hear your thoughts. I'm in the enterprise software space and kind of selling to a notoriously tough industry, oil, gas, energy, utility customers. For some of these technological transformations takes a long time. I know you mentioned a little bit about, find something shorter. Like, how do you even go about convincing the customer on the outcome you're trying to prove or sell in that sense? You know, I'd love to hear like maybe where's even a starting point where customers may be more resistant than those in the technology industry.
I think, in general, what I found is that in most industries, leading indicators for long-term success are pretty well understood. And I don't know that space, but if you take, for example, I'm trying to think of a good example of the jellyfish example. If in the space of, engineering management, it's kind of understood that, if you're gonna put up a health dashboard on things you should be caring about along the way, those things are pretty well understood. And I think it's about saying to the customer, do you agree that these indicators are signs of these larger outcomes? And if they don't, then you gotta find other ones. I mean, I feel like you could probably say, whatever your big outcomes are, kind of even use AI and kind of what would leading indicators be for this ultimate result over a 24-month period. And I just can't push on it enough. And I know I'm making it sound like, well, just do that. But, and I'm not in your space, but, I've never not been able to do this with a customer who is willing to really think about, let's step back for a minute. We believe our own sales pitch, but if we bought this, how would we know it was working early? What indicators would we have that we made a good decision? That's really what the question is. And it can even be things like we deliver the product on time, or we deliver killer board presentations, or whatever the things are that makes them feel good about their investment.
That's helpful, thanks.
I'll try a question. Sorry, I did a little off topic, but actually I'm going to take that a bit further. So I'm a founder of a business that helps develop or helps provide customers with personalized skincare routines and like product recommendations. And so I'm curious to understand when you're talking about the time frame that customers realize value, right? So because it's customized, because everyone's skin reacts differently, how do you communicate the value to users to keep engaging with your platform when it is so personalized and you're doing your best that you can do to provide them information and to keep them engaged?
What did you say the company does again?
It provides personalized product recommendations for beauty enthusiasts, so building a customized skincare routine. So based on their inputs, it kind of develops, skincare routine. And
Right, so you're like ultimate outcome, here's amazing.
Yeah, here's amazing, these products work for me, this is great, love your platform, like, let's keep going, right? So-
Right, I mean, I guess I'd start thinking about like, I don't know your space, but things like early indicators, oh, I'm sorry. Depending on your user, what are early indicators that would lead them to feel like they were getting to that? I mean, they won't know till they're there. So early indicators would be like, is it easy to apply? Is it, does it feel good? On a scale of 1 to 10, how's my face feel at the end of the day? I look for things like that. Again, not knowing your space is, like I know when I've tried new products, like you don't know if they're gonna last well, but right off the bat, if they're hard to use, they feel icky, like I'll never find out because I won't stay at them for long enough. So you have to think of like, what are the things that we can measure and check in with the customer about and get a positive response.
Thank you.
Sorry, I just don't know enough about what you do.
No, that's helpful, thank you.
I know enough about skincare company, but.
Should use my app.
Okay.
So I have a quick question. What are your thoughts on getting therapists to use your platform to connect with their clients using your platform instead of using something like Zoom or Microsoft Teams?
I'm sorry, I don't quite understand.
So I guess my question is in terms of what we've been discussing, what are the different avenues you can go through to get therapists to actually, get onboarded into your platform, right? Instead of connecting to their clients using Zoom or Microsoft Teams, because it's much easier. Like with Teams, you already have, Microsoft 365 in your Office, you might as well just use that easily connect to someone without paying extra. So what, if we're providing a different platform, what can we do to get them on board with us and actually stay with us?
Okay. Well, I mean, I think anytime you can just like, Foresight, right? They're providing something that you can do in other ways for free. And so you have to think about like what the outcomes are. Maybe it's easier, it's faster to do it if you have a tool versus trying to make a generic thing do the work of a specialized tool. But you have to think about what the outcomes are that would make a customer feel like, I'm glad I spent money on this versus doing it for free. I don't know what those would be in your specific case, but you should acknowledge, you're right, you can do this for free. And what are you giving up when you do that, right? So if we, I give up Foresight to do this, a ton of meetings, a ton of customer conversations. It would be a fraction of those if we were using a tool. So that's what you need to think about.
Kevin, thank you for your time. I was just curious, how can we connect with you beyond this workshop? How can we connect with you?
With me. Customer growth consulting is my website, and I can talk to me after that.
Definitely, thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
Something that I'm worried about, I'm still tinkering with an idea of a deadline for to create a centralized platform for people planning events where they can find all their vendors, all their things in one place instead of scattering all over the internet. And I've come to realize we'll be serving two quote unquote customers, both convincing vendors to get on our platform and then regular people to get on our platform to find those vendors. And now I am concerned about me having to work with just me and my friend and have and communicate very different impacts for vendors and for customers.
It's true, right? The value story is different, right? For a vendor to go, yeah, I'll use your platform, you need to come up with value drivers and outcomes that they'll care about. And then you have to arm them with value drivers and outcomes they can tell their users, right? So it's you're responsible for getting their attendees to adopt. Because if you use your platform and no one uses it during the event, they're not gonna be happy. So that's one of those things where it's like, what's your responsibility for making sure that they're defining the reasons and outcomes for their users? So it's a 2-layer thing. Good choice, something hard. You good? All right, well, thank you all so much. Great to see you.
Oh, yeah, I sure, yeah. If I'll tell you what kind of frameworks we're that must be something we can go up.